I'm Alexis Christoforous. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much, and welcome to the Monday edition of Balance of Power. Live from Washington, I'm Joe Matthew. Thanks for being here as we count down, yes, to a possible shutdown. We'll drag out the countdown clocks a little bit later because nothing came from another weekend in which lawmakers could have been negotiating here. Lines have been drawn. One thing, though, we can add, a new wrinkle. 3 p.m. today. I told you I was going to mention the president's schedule. It's not just Benjamin Netanyahu. And I will remind you, about an hour from now, we expect a bilateral news conference. Just Benjamin Netanyahu. And I will remind you, about an hour from now, we expect a bilateral news conference from these two leaders on yet another visit to the White House with a potential ceasefire in Gaza at hand. But at 3 p.m. Eastern time, shortly after Netanyahu leaves the building, it's going to be the top 4 congressional leaders in the Oval Office with the president. This is the meeting that was on and then off last week. Schumer, Jeffries, Thune, Johnson in the Oval. Interesting, it'll be the first time that President Trump has ever sat down with Hakeem Jeffries, who likes to call President Trump a con man, and spoke to reporters about the stakes earlier today. Let's listen.
We've made clear that we are willing to find a bipartisan path forward on a spending bill negotiated by Democrats and Republicans. But it has to meet the needs of the American people. We're not going to simply go along to get along with a Republican bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans. Our line in the sand is the bill has to help everyday Americans, not hurt everyday Americans.
This is on the eve of the shutdown, which is why everyone seems to think that, well, some sort of shutdown is inevitable, even if it's a couple of days. Maybe it'll be a couple of months. This is the whole narrative from last week, right? Russ Vought is drooling over this idea to get the keys to the kingdom and decide what is essential and what is not. You know who's still as cool as can be? America's dad. Checked in with him first thing when I walked in this morning, and maybe you've even heard him on the air today. 40% the odds, run by our good friend Nathan Dean, senior policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. And yes, we pulled him back into the studio because it's Monday. That means his podcast is dropping on this RSS feed today. Nathan Dean, it's good to see you. It's like, Christmas Eve around here or something, right? Except nothing's going to happen is what you've been guessing. Is this meeting today a game changer?
So I don't think the meeting today is all that important unless President Trump comes out and signals some support for these extension of health care subsidies. That's about it. I think the Republicans don't want President Trump to talk about it. I think President Trump is somewhat open to the idea. But if they can keep him on message and say, let's not talk about it, then I think we go into tomorrow with the headline saying a shutdown's coming. Now, the reason why I was at 40%, and the joke was I'm 40%, but probably wrong, is because I do think there's a chance here for another 1 or 2 week CR to keep the negotiations going. Because these shutdowns, if you will, they don't happen until the moments before the deadline when parties come back and say, look, are we going to shut the government down? Are we going to accept the blame? And are we willing to have this work out politically advantageous to us? And I don't see that happening just yet. Now, I hate to say this for our production team, but when it comes to Representative Jeffries or Speaker Johnson, they don't matter in this fight.
Why?
The House has already passed a clean CR. It's not like the House is going to come back. Representative Jeffries, it's not like the Democrats in the House are ever going to be supporting you. Tomorrow morning when folks wake up, just have to pay attention to Senator Thune and Senator Schumer.
If they make a change, though, then these guys do matter. Are you suggesting that clean CR gets another run, another vote, and they find a way to pass it?
Well, the Republicans were talking about that just now in the conference. I was watching some of the tweets coming in from our Bloomberg News reporters, and they were saying that the Republicans were looking for potentially to bring them back to town because the House Democrats are actually taking up a lot of the airwaves of the moment. The Republicans aren't here in the House. Bring them back to town and see what they can do, maybe potentially put them up for another vote just to see where they stand right before the shutdown. Now, I think the way, if it were to happen, is the Senate would then agree to a 1 week CR. They vote on it. The House would have to go to unanimous consent. But if there is a shutdown, and if we do this on Wednesday, and I'm saying I'm sorry, what I think happens is you have a shutdown that goes into this week. And most importantly, for the market participants that are listening to this call at the moment, the BLS has already said that they're not going to come out with their jobs data and they're going to delay it while the shutdown continues.
Got it.
I had a client come in this morning and just say, well, does this mean the Federal Reserve's not going to get it? Because the Federal Reserve sort of needs this.
Yeah.
The answer is most likely not.
Wow.
And so the data aspect of this is the one that I think the market participants need to be looking at the most.
Okay.
Because markets don't really react to it. And then if we get into a shutdown that is in, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and just remember, 750,000 to 1 million government workers paid every other week, there's an economic aspect to this as well. So if we get into a shutdown that's lasting a month or so, then the economic story comes in, and then the markets potentially could come back after that.
See, I told you he was going to say that. Now, our crack production team is standing by in the Senate. I'm the guy who called for Jeffries because it was today. Both Senate leaders were on Sunday morning TV, drawing their lines. Let's listen to Thune and Schumer from Meet the Press.
Totally up to the Democrats. The ball is in their court. There is a bill sitting at the desk in the Senate right now. We could pick it up today and pass it.
We've been resolute that we need a meeting, that we need a real negotiation, that you don't do this by one party putting together a completely partisan bill and saying take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. Does it feel different when it's the day of, is your point, right? You get the conference in a room. Are we really doing this, guys? There's a vote in an hour. What are we going to do? That changes the psychology. Is that meeting today then just for show? They come out to the sticks, the president goes on Truth Social, and nothing's changed?
Yeah, I think today's meeting is just for show because it is at the White House. The meeting that I want to see happen is over at Capitol Hill. And if Senator Thune and Senator Schumer get into a room and say, look, are we going to do this or not?
Yes.
Call this probably around tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's when I'm going to start thinking like, hey, this may actually happen. So if we get into a situation where the Democrats in the Senate, again, the House Democrats, I don't think really matter here. But if we get into a situation where the Democrats in the Senate on their internal calls, and I'm going to be looking for the Bloomberg News reporters to start telling us what they're saying behind the scenes, if they continue to say, let's go forward with the shutdown, then I'm going to say we're going to most likely do this. The one thing I would throw out there is just more of like my black sheep scenario of where I think is coming out is the Virginia, Maryland senators.
Yes.
Because if Russ Vought gets his way.
I think you've been dead on here.
Yeah. If Russ Vought gets his way and they start laying off a lot of folks, it's going to be the folks in Northern Virginia and in Prince County that ultimately are going to be bearing the brunt of this. And if I'm one of those 4 Democratic senators, I'm not sure I want to put my constituencies at risk.
And if you've got a gubernatorial race rolling in Virginia, Tom Emmer said it himself on the air. Democrats let the government shut down, and that's his angle on this. They're going to lose the gubernatorial race in Virginia. Now, I don't know if that's a real possibility here. Abigail Spanberger is way ahead, the Democrat, in this race. But that's got to be present in their thoughts and deliberations.
Absolutely. I mean, because look, I can't tell you that if the government were to lay off workers, would that be good for the Democrats or bad for the Republicans? I just can't tell you because DOGE occurred and it didn't seem to really change the approval levels all that much.
Right.
The Democratic approval rating right now is in around 30%. That's not great. President Trump is higher than that. So from the Democratic perspective, they'll say, look, let's have a shutdown now. Let's figure it out, and then let's get our party back on track before November 2026. Because if you remember, the Tea Party did this back in 2013, and it didn't really hurt them, came to the midterms in 2014. So when it comes to the Virginia and New Jersey races, I'm sure the folks down in Trenton and Richmond are like, hey, we don't want to play here, get this resolved. But there could be some national politics at play as well.
And then, that's why that November 21 CR was kind of an interesting timeline when you consider the gubernatorial contests here as well. Look, locally, you live around here, obviously. This is a big economic story locally, realizing that the market's not concerned specifically about the DMV region. But all those who were on paid leave from the DOGE stop getting checks, as well as the purported mass layoffs that the White House is putting forth. All of a sudden, Washington is not recession-proof. In fact, it might have its own recession.
I can tell you that the number 2 topic at the flag football fields over in McLean on
The
Saturday,
number 2 topic.
The number 1 was flag football.
I'm glad to hear that.
And the ref in particular. But the number 2 one was, is Congress going to come back and retroactively pay these government workers?
There you
because
go.
if you remember, government workers, Congress has always said they're going to get a retroactive.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure that I can honestly say 100% that that's going to occur this time.
That's the problem.
And if this shutdown goes a month, that could be a month without pay. If you're also a government contractor, a buddy of mine owns his own contracting firm. He's like, how long is this shutdown going to last? Because I only have so much cash flow that can keep me going where I'm paying my workers at 100%. So I would say is that there is a very much a local issue here. And this is why we should definitely be paying attention to it. But I also go back to my thought is that if we do have a shutdown, I think it gets resolved by this weekend because I don't think the Democrats want to give Roosevelt enough time to get a plan going into fruition.
That's a really big part of the story here, obviously. Congressional staffers lose their pay in a shutdown, right?
Yep.
So the boss sees this firsthand in the office.
I think the Capitol Hill gym stays open, though. I think that's one of the things that's deemed essential. But look,
Okay.
Shutdowns are not good for those of us in the D.C. region. Whether you're a mother who wants to take your child to the National Zoo or you're just trying to go to a museum or something like that, we all feel it. But at the end of the day, the folks over on Capitol Hill are looking at this from a national perspective. And that's why I keep going back to this idea that the Virginia, Maryland senators are the ones that I think will eventually step in here and say, maybe this is something we got to deal with. But ultimately, the Democrats also want to want to be seen fighting President Trump.
Yeah.
And if Senator Schumer caves and makes a deal like he made in March, then I think Senator Schumer's in a big trouble with the rest of his party.
Wow. All right, I can't have Nathan in here without asking you about the cannabis because the president brought it up again. You see, this Sunday shared a video online promoting the health benefits of cannabis. Quote, the most important senior health initiative of the century, it said. MJ, the ETF up 15% today. It's just the latest dose of hot sauce. Is it real?
Yeah. So
What's he doing on Truth Social?
I think that there's two scenarios that will play out for a reschedulization. If you're one of the retail investors, you want scenario one, which is President Trump essentially waves a magic wand and says rescheduling done today. That's what I think a lot of the retail investors want. Now, I'm a little bit on a naysayer on scenario one because I think scenario two plays out where you're going to see a positive statement from President Trump saying, look, we're going to do reschedulization, but he's also going to kick the can and put it back into the process of the FDA.
Okay. Wow.
So I think it's going to take time.
Fascinating. More calls today on BLS or weed?
BLS.
BLS. All right. You never know. I have to ask. Nathan Dean, ladies and gentlemen, Bloomberg Intelligence. There's your briefing. If you want more, subscribe to the podcast for Balance of Power. You'll get Nathan's Monday briefing as well from Bloomberg Intelligence. Thank you, sir. 40%, but he could be wrong. What are we going to do? This is Bloomberg.